Hello, good to see you again, wherever you're watching from in the world. Welcome to Block 4, Place Value, Ordering Integers and Decimals, Lesson 15. I'll share my screen. So, in your previous lesson, you learned how to write 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000, so on and so forth as powers of 10. In this lesson, you're going to learn how to write positive integers in the form a times 10 to the power n, or in what we call standard form or scientific notation. But before we start, there is something that really baffles my mind. Thousands of people are learning from these videos, but they're not yet subscribers. I want to ask you for a huge favor. Please click the like button, click the subscribe button, and click the notification bell so that whenever new videos are uploaded, you will be notified so that we can continue to achieve our mission of educating the global population of children. Thank you. Before we start the main lesson, I would like you to do these retrieval practice questions in 4 minutes. So pause the video and answer these questions. This will get you thinking about maths and recall what you learned in your previous lesson. Assuming you've paused the video and you've worked through the questions, here are the answers. In the first one, you were asked to fill the missing parts in the place value chart. And you should know by now, because there was a lesson where we talked about using the place value charts. In the next question, you were asked to use the comparator operation, comparator symbols, or the less than or greater than sign, to show which numbers are greater than or less than. So 10 to the power of 7 is greater than 10 to the power of 6. 10 to the power of 3 is less than 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, because 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 is 10 to the power of 4. So it is greater than 10 to the power of 3. 10 to the power of 5 is less than 10 to the power of 4 times 10 to the power of 3, because 10 to the power of 4 times 10 to the power of 3 is 10 to the power of 7. Next, you were asked to work out the range. I hope you haven't forgotten this. The range is the largest number minus the lowest number. Let's do our new learning today. Did you know that 1,000 is equal to 10 to the power of 3? Of course you should, because we did this particular task in our previous lesson. What about 4,000? How would we write this so that it has, as part of it, the power of 10? Well, 4,000 is 4 times 10 to the power of 3. 4,000 is 4 times 1,000. So we can rewrite this as 4 times 10 to the power of 3. Now, this is what we call standard form. That's ordinary form, and that's standard form. So it is important you know how standard form looks. It is a times 10 to the power n. In this case, the n is 3, the a is 4. I must mention something early for you to know that this first number here, there is a rule we must follow. This first number has to be greater than or equal to 1, but less than 10. I'll say that again. This first number here has to be greater than or equal to 1 or less than 10. It cannot be a two-digit number. Okay. Let's do some thinking. How would you write 60,000 in this form? Have a think. Well, 60,000 is 6 times 10,000. But how would you write 5 times 10 to the power 7 in our ordinary form? Well, if 60,000 is 6 times 10,000, we know how to write numbers like this in standard form. We did this in our previous lesson. So if you haven't watched that video, please go and watch it before you get onto this video. So we know that this can be written as 10 to the power of 4. Now, to write this as an ordinary number, we know that 5 times 10 to the power of 7 is going to be 5 times 10 times 10 times 10 up to 7 places. Now, that is the same as 5 times 10 million. Yeah, 1 and 7 zeros. Now, your answer is 50 million. Rosie is writing, so this is another example we're going through. Rosie is writing 500,000 in standard form. Rosie said 500,000 is equal to 50 times 10,000. So the number in standard form will be 50 times 10 to the power of 4. What mistake has Rosie made? Remember what I mentioned about this first number at the start of the lesson. Have a think. Well, you would have seen that the first number is greater than 10. Remember what I said? This first number has to be equal to 1, greater than 1, or it has to be less than 10. So it can be greater than or equal to 1, but it has to be less than 10. So actually what Rosie should have done is to say that 500,000 is 5 times 100,000. That way, she can write this in standard form. So this will now be 5 times 10 to the power of 5. Okay, before you have some practice, here is what we've learned so far. We have learned that you can write positive integers in standard form. But when you write this, you have to split the number into the form 5 or 4 or whatever the number is times 1 and a number of zeros. If you can do that, then you can write the number in standard form. We also learned that it's possible to take a number and rewrite it from standard form into ordinary number. You use the same ideas that you have learned in this lesson and in the previous lesson. So pause the video and answer questions 1 to 6. Pause the video and answer question 1 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've worked through question 1, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. So here, we're simply splitting the numbers or filling in gaps so that we have a really good understanding of how to split the numbers into integers, whole numbers, and the tens. So you can see the answers there. So pause the video and answer question 2 in 2 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the question, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. For question 2, you were asked to sort these values into the correct columns of the table. So numbers not in standard form and numbers written in standard form. So by now, you should know that standard form must have this first number greater than or equal to 1, but less than 10. And you can see them there. These cannot be in standard form. Okay. Pause the video and answer questions 3 and 4 in 5 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 3 and 4, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. For question 3, you were asked, find the missing number so that these numbers are written in standard form. And you can see them there. Questions 4, you were asked, write the missing power so that these numbers are written in standard form. So you can see the answers there. So by now, you should know how to write numbers in standard form. Question number 5 and 6, pause the video and answer questions 5 and 6 in 5 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've worked hard at these questions, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. Here, for question 5, you were asked to write these as ordinary numbers. So by now, you should know that this means 8, and then followed by the number of zeros there, which is 6. Question 6, you were asked to write these numbers in standard form. And you can see we followed the rules here, and that's how you write numbers in standard form. This last one, you can write it in standard form before you do their multiplication, or you can do their multiplication and still write your answer in standard form. Okay, how do we use place value charts with standard form? We start by using the knowledge that we had before about using place value charts. But this time, we're going to replace with numbers those place value columns. We replace them with numbers, and then we replace them as standard form. Now we're going to use the same method of using counters to compare numbers once we know the standard form numbers that we place in the place value columns. So if we want to compare these two numbers, we can place counters in their appropriate place value columns before we compare them. And you can see that this, which is 3 times 10 to the power of 4, is actually greater than 3 times 10 to the power of 5 is actually greater than 3 times 10 to the power of 4. Why? Because when we place it in the place value column, we clearly see the place values. What about this one? Have a think. Well, this is very obvious that that number must be less than this number because of the place value columns. But what if they have the same powers? Again, placing counters in the correct place value columns can help us figure out or find out which is actually greater. And that means 5 times 10 to the power of 3 is greater than 4 times 10 to the power of 3. Okay. What we've learned so far is that since you already know how to use the place value charts, you can replace those place value columns with their appropriate and correct standard forms. Now, once you get those, it's easy to compare numbers in standard form. Pause the video and answer questions 7 and 8 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 7 and 8, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. Here, Rosie says, Eva. I always call her Rosie. Okay. So the other one with the different hair color is, I think it's Rosie. Okay. So here it says 4 times 10 to the power of 7 is smaller than 6 times 10 to the power of 5 because 4 is smaller than 6. Is she right? And then here, Dexter said, I don't think you are correct. I think the powers are important. Of course, Dexter is right. The powers are important because you can use the place value column to actually state which number is greater. And then here you ask to circle the greatest number. That's straightforward. Pause the video and answer question 9 in 3 minutes. Here is the answer. Now, once you have found the place value of each of these numbers, you can take away the smallest from the largest, and that's how you get this answer. Here is question 10. You required, the table shows information about planets. You're required to complete the table, and then which planets has the greatest radius. So you're given this table to complete, and then you're required to answer some questions. So complete this in standard form, ordinary form, and then mass in kilograms standard form. Here are the answers. Mark your work and celebrate your success for this lesson. You've done really well. Absolutely fantastic. Well done. Give yourself a pat on the back. And here is B to C. And that brings us to the end of our lesson. So what have we learned so far? We have learned that you can write positive integers as powers of 10. You can write positive integers to include powers of 10. So you're writing them as standard form. But something really important, the first number, when you write it in the form a times 10 to the power of n, the first number a, the first number you write as a, has to be greater than or equal to 1, but less than 10. I'll repeat. The first number has to be greater than or equal to 1, but less than 10. And then before you write times 10 to the power of whatever you need to write. And remember, when you have ordinary numbers, you can split them such that you can have that first number being equal to or less than, being equal to 1 or greater than, equal to or greater than 1, but less than 10. And then you can write times 10, whatever number of zeros you have, which you can then write as 10 to the power n. Until next time, take care and bye-bye.